WP, you die in a car accident and go to the afterlife. Everything is amazing until you meet several generations of relatives who are disgusted by your modern behavior and all want a word. Welcome to the prompt. All top-level comments must be a story or poem. Reply here for other comments. Reminders. Greater than stories at least 100 words. Poems, 30 but include, poem, responses don't have to fulfill every detail greater than C, reality fiction. Some URL, and, simple prompts. Some URL, for stricter titles greater than, be civil. Some URL, in any feedback and follow the, rules. Some URL. Hashtag icon help, what is this? Some URL. Hashtag icon information, new here? Some URL. Hashtag icon help, writing help? Some URL. Hashtag icon exclamation, announcements. Some URL. Hashtag icon comments, Discord chatroom. Some URL. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please, contact the moderators of this subreddit /message/compose/?2=r/writing prompts, if you have any questions or concerns. You died in a car accident at the age of 42, somewhere in rural Maine. It wasn't your fault, the road was covered in sheer black ice. Once your tires started to spin, there was nothing you could have done to avoid hitting the ditch and rolling 5 times. At least Claire wasn't in the car with you. You lived a good life, really, you did, filled with great friendships and fulfilling work and a wife who loved you as much as you loved her. All things considered, you wouldn't have done a thing differently. After you died, I brought you to the afterlife. I watched you sit down and stare, all bright-eyed like a little kid, at everything around you. Do you have any regrets? I asked you. A few. Most of them seem stupid now. Most. Your face twisted. I've always wished I knew more about my mother and her family. She died when I was 3. I knew that already, I'd carried her to the afterlife too. And my dad, you continued, he didn't like talking about her. I should have tried harder to learn about her, who she was, what she liked. Would you like to meet her? I almost felt bad when I saw how your eyes lit up. She's been asking to have a word with you, too, I said. I did feel bad when you cried when you first saw your mother. How come you never had kids? She didn't hold back her words, she stared straight into your eyes. I wanted grandchildren. Your mouth gaped open, like a fish. Well, Claire and I never really wanted that lifestyle. How selfish. She shook her head. Your great-grandfather is also here. He has a few things to say. You shrunk back into the collar of your shirt. I can't believe you let your wife work, he said. His bristled mustache did nothing to hide his disapproving frown. It would have been all right if she was a secretary or a nurse, but you let her do that? You stumbled over your words. She wanted to work. You tried to brush a layer of sweat off your brow, not realizing you couldn't sweat here. Claire loved doing with work. Have you seen the oak bookshelves she made for our cabin? They were gorgeous. He looked down his nose at you. You sat in an air-conditioned office all day. Your great-grandmother came to his side. She nodded in agreement at her husband's words. What good did you do? You wasted your life playing with toys. Toys? The anger seeped into your voice. I worked on developing AI. Your mother, your great-grandfather, and your great-grandmother all shook their heads. You wasted your life. No children. But maybe that was for the better, seeing as you couldn't even provide for your wife. What did you do, other than stare at machines? Did you ever lift a finger? Paid someone else to fix your car? Ordered food to your doorstep 3 nights a week? What a disappointing life. You blinked. Your face relaxed. I definitely wasted my life on something, you said, your voice flat and emotionless. Thank you for showing me. You smiled with your mouth pressed into a flat line. You turned to me. I'm ready to move on, now. I nodded and reached for you. Your mother and her family faded into the ether. Do you have any regrets? No, you shook your head. No, I really don't. /r/Lise writes. I was almost home. They say accidents are more likely to happen within 5 miles of your destination, but does anyone really believe that? I guess you really let your guard down on the home stretch. After a week of 12-hour days, I'd never been more ready for home. Maybe I was speeding. Maybe I dozed off. I don't remember, to be honest. All I recall is the sound of crunching metal and squealing tires, then darkness. I stayed in the darkness for a while, probably unconscious but not dead yet. Eventually I saw a light, and found myself moving towards it. The light was so calming, so peaceful. Nothing hurt, not even my knee that had been bugging me for most of my life. The light got so bright I couldn't keep my eyes open, then suddenly it dimmed. After some adjusting, my eyes finally focused on a small figure before me. Grandma. Oh, I missed you so much, it's been so long. How? Oh, this probably means I'm dead. Oh, don't worry about that, dear, it happens to the best of us. I missed you too. But we need to have a word. What's that shirt you're wearing? I thought you were coming back from work. Where's your tie? It's just a band shirt. You passed before Rob Zombie got big, didn't you? He does movies too. Ugh, he looks so scary. They let you wear that to work? Yeah, I worked, with computers. They were super relaxed about how we dress since the customers didn't see us. How many times did I tell you to dress for the job you wanted? Looking like that, you must want to be that scary guy. Is he wearing makeup? Is he a clown? I don't get it. Robert, come over here and see this shirt. Guess 6-year-old me never saw how old-fashioned Grandma was. A man in a suit came over. He looked familiar, but it took me a while to figure out why. Robert, your uncle? That's right, Junior. His shirt, Bertha. What about his hair? They would have booted me from the army in a second with that mop. Oh, Robert, calm down, his hair is barely past his ears. You know, you must have passed before that came into fashion. His hair? Maybe that's why he's still single at 23. By his age I was married to your mom with 5 kids. I didn't even know this guy. Must have been Grandma and Robert's dad, but we could never find pictures from that far back. You just needed us to run the farm. He doesn't even have a farm. There's no need to have that many kids that fast nowadays. Doesn't have a farm? No man's a man without owning land. Yet another face I didn't know. Grandma's grandpa? Guy looked like he came straight out of a history book. How many times do we have to tell you, you can vote without owning land? Now you can move as often as you'll wish, no use in hoarding acres upon acres anymore. And on it went. Each older generation complained about something while the younger defended it. When they started yelling in long-forgotten languages, I had enough. Hey guys, let me talk. Somehow that worked. I could feel the impending respect your elders crap, so I just pushed through it. Maybe, just maybe, each generation brings new things. Whatever you lived through seems normal, and the stuff after you seems wrong. It happens. It will happen to me when the next generation comes up here. Please, I'd love to meet and talk to you all, but can we agree to disagree? You call me Your Majesty. I've been up here since before your dad's dad was even born. Jethro, the royal bloodline doesn't count up here. More arguing, more shouting, more relatives. Eventually I snuck off to find some peace. A light appeared in front of me through the clouds. It grew bright but never blinded me. A small figure appeared and slowly grew until a man stood before me. He blinked and looked around in awe, before staring at me in wonder. Dad? My boy, oh, I'm so happy to see you. I can't believe you passed before your mother. Oh, there are so many relatives up here you'll have to meet. Wait, what is that? A glimmer of metal protruded from my son's lip. Son, we need to have a word. You got your lip pierced? Grandma, come over and see this ring. Roadhead and Coke? Really, Johnny? Grandma was always a bitch. She never truly understood the genius that was Johnny the Sex Johnson. You robbed a charity auction for dying orphans, she carried on, whilst being consoled by his deceased uncle. Johnny was a rebel. He got his name the Sex when he started walking into rooms shouting, "The Sex is here." He would do this at parties, birthdays, funerals, anywhere where the room needed to know that the Sex had arrived. Professional vlogger by day and a petty thief and racist by night. He had started dating Stacy a few months ago. Sure, she was 47 and more sedated than other girls his age, but she was bitchin' according to Johnny. She was in the car during the coke-fueled, roadhead, orphan-stealing incident which had ended his life. "I have questions," a random and oddly dressed man said at the back. "The fuck are you?" Johnny carelessly said as he searched his pocket for his crack pipe. Reginald Johnson, I served in the Great War and died in the Somme. What is Roadhead? With a name like Reginald, you'll never know Johnny, after the sick burn he gave to Reginald, looked for a high five from any of his caveman ancestors. There were murmurs in the room of disapproval and disgust. Fuck you all, you don't know me, I'm a professional. Day drinking isn't a profession, said Great Aunt Jean, shaking her head disapprovingly. You all died like bitches, at least I won out in style. You had an OAP's mouth round your cock. Hella good head though, he said as he offered a fist bump to the same confused caveman. Then Johnny felt a tug on his boot-cut ripped jeans. As he looked down to see who was fucking with his threads, he saw him. Skipper. His first dog. Play? The dog said excitedly. What? Play, let's play, I've been waiting to play with you. Johnny forgot this dog. It had passed away when he was 8 and he had never really been the same. It had waited for 20 years for him and didn't have a bad word to say. Play? The dog insisted. The room was silent. The people that knew Johnny when he was still alive had never seen him this engaged with anything. Something mattered to him for once. I can't right now. When play? I don't know. Play with Skipper, his grandmother said. I'll do what you want. Do you want to play with the dog? She responded quickly. Maybe. Then do what you want. There was a silence as the dog didn't take his eyes off him. Johnny, stubborn to not let his family affect his decisions, was torn to do what he wanted, and to resist what they wanted. He stood up in a huff, grabbed the ball at his feet and took Skipper away. That plan worked, Grandma said. He always loved that dog, I think he missed it as much as it missed him. Doesn't excuse his behavior, Reginald said. No, but it's a step in the right direction. A woman calling herself my Aunt Marge was the first one who wanted a word. She sat across from me in one of the white rooms with her arms crossed and her eyes narrowed, like a teacher waiting for an excuse to give you a punishment. She had a gray curls of hair and pinched look to her face. All I could really focus on though was the yellow halo above her head and the feathery wings sprouting from her back. I wasn't going to get mine until I was done with this whole processing situation. They made her look like a weird human-bird hybrid. I almost wanted to ask if she could fly. First of all, she said, tapping a finger onto the table, where do you get off doing those things you did? I shifted in my seat. What do you mean? You know what I'm talking about. I really don't. Aunt Marge sighed, but it was the kind of sigh someone does when they're disappointed with an answer you gave. You had impure thoughts. Doesn't everyone? No. I'm pretty sure they do. And even if I did, so what? It's not like me thinking about. Regardless, it's unacceptable. You dragged the family name through the mud. Wait, they all know about it? Jonathan, we know everything you did. All right, well, I'm sorry then, I said, shrugging my shoulders. I didn't mean to do it. I started to walk to the door, but the handle that had been there a moment ago was gone. I turned back to face Aunt Marge, who had a triumphant look on her face that made her look oddly pig-like. Oh, Jonathan, we've only just begun. She pulled out a scroll of paper and let it unravel. It rolled far along the floor, just stopping at me feet. Hey! I said, glancing at some of the bulleted notes. They all had the days and times the crime was committed. Some of these just say the same thing over and over again, at the same day and time and... Oh! Aunt Marge smirked. She was holding a red pen in her other hand. Take a seat, Jonathan. We're going to be here a while. I looked around the area. Some sort of cosmic waiting room, a bemused smile on my face as I looked at all of my ancestors in turn. Most of them were shuffling their feet, as if conflicted on what to do or say. A few of them refused to meet my eyes. Not surprising really, they probably had a long list of grievances about how I lived my life, only for me to muck it up with how I died. It was admittedly impressive, if I do say so myself. Well no, don't all talk at once. I drawled, sarcasm dripping from my voice. That seemed to snap them out of their daze, the old guy nearest me focusing a stern look towards me. Not sure exactly who he was, too many generations back and I was never exactly interested in the family drama. Boy, your life was a mess. Non-athletic. Lazy. Frail. You sat at home reading and playing on your electronics instead of going out and being a proper adult. You preferred the company of other males, like some sort of degenerate. You even wore collars like some kind of animal. An absolute disgrace to our family name. Why, when I was your age I tuned him out when he started working himself up into a proper tirade. Not exactly the first time I had heard someone denouncing the way I lived. Granted, most of them did it when I was still living, but oh well. Man, the old guy sure had a set of lungs. Not entirely sure how much time had passed here, but it seemed like he was talking for ages and still bitching about my life. Yada yada, history of warriors, outcast nerd, blah blah blah. After gods know how long, a doorway of light opened up on the side and a big Viking-looking dude wandered out, sounds of revelry spilling out behind him as the old guy's ranting ground to a halt. Hey, processing is taking too long, I was sent to see what was going on. The Viking said, walking up to us, me on one side, the old man and the rest of my ancestors behind him on the other. We were just getting to that. We still had complaints about his lifestyle choices. The old guy grumbled, clearly annoyed but not wanting to outright oppose the big Viking dude, who scoffed at his statement. Nonsense. He may be small and frail looking and have been a bit unorthodox in his life, but by his last moments he clearly proved to have the blood of a berserker and has more than earned his place among our halls. Come, we've been waiting to hear the tales of your fights. What made you decide to take on an alien invasion with a bunch of TCG cards in a bag, a broom, and a decorative replica of a fantasy sword? The Viking stated, grabbing me by the shoulders and leading me towards the doorway while the old guy spluttered in the background. I simply shrugged. It's what I had on hand and they destroyed my favorite steakhouse. It's the one place in the area that can make lamb correctly, so I got a bit pissed off. The Viking laughed as we stepped through the doorway. You'll fit right in. Welcome to Valhalla, friend. I'll show you around. You wanted to talk to me, Grandpa? Sit down, Johnny. Look, I'm sorry you died at age 17. Rough break. But at least you're here in the afterlife with family. Yeah, about that. Why are we all in hell? Because I cheated on your grandma, your mother embezzled from her work, your father once killed a guy, and you. Well, I guess it's guilt by association. I got shot trying to help foil a robbery. A woman and her child were being held at gunpoint, and I tried to save them. You shouldn't have bothered. Your best years were ahead of you. Really? No, and I'm gonna tell you what I told some of the other young people down here in hell, like the Columbine killers and the little girl from Poltergeist, clean up your act. I'm sorry? Look at you. You're all soft, modern, and dull. I've been talking with all of your other relatives down here, mainly the ones older than me, and we're tired of your bullshit bebop greaser attitude, you dime store hoodlum. Whoa, 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 slow down. First things first. Did you say my dad killed a guy? He did. Hit and run when he was in Milwaukee for a business conference when you were 8. Remember how he came home early and didn't leave the basement for 3 days? He was driving drunk on his way back to his hotel when he ran over a homeless guy. Oh, my God. Anyways, that wasn't your fault. Hell's not too bad, though. I'm about to go to dinner and you can come along if you clean up your act. No slouching, no modern slang, no hair gel. It's not every day you get to eat with former President Gerald Ford and Weird Al Yankovic's parents. Do I have to wear a tie? This is hell, so yes, but only a clip-on. I hate this place. Yeah, don't get me started. End scene. When the love runs out. The incident happened on the first day of the year. Investigators deemed it an unfortunate accident, though public opinion sways toward murder. Eric Minow, the only survivor of the accident, would go on in interviews to wish his late family the best that God can give, though he remained silent about the other victim, Ray Coltrane. Was it guilt? Malice? Who could say? Nobody but him. Regardless, it would become apparent to Ray that he had bigger problems, such as the fact that he landed himself a nice little corner in Purgatory. He wasn't sure how he knew where he was, let alone why he was there in the first place. Perhaps he was too morally ambiguous. Too idle throughout his life, with so little influence that he had nowhere else to go. Maybe the place was an ethereal waiting room, where he would remain patient for the rapture, when he would finally pass on to a permanent afterlife. Or maybe this was something more simple. A classic example of unfinished business. To his immediate and lasting shock, he would find that the answer was something close to classical, yet still unfamiliar. Directly in front of him stood his parents, grandparents, and all of the ancestors he never met, each with an equally grim appearance, save for his parents, who had appeared as undeservingly proud as ever. In a way, it was comforting to see his parents still as unconditionally loving as they were when he was a young child. Now, 27 years later, it seemed little had changed. The first to speak to him were his parents, simply informing him that they were just as proud as they appeared and that they were ecstatic to see him for the first time in a decade. The next were his grandparents, disappointed by his manners. Then came his greats, disappointed by his lust. Then came his great-greats, disappointed by his underachievement. Then came his great-great-greats, disappointed by his unintelligence. Then came his fourth-greats, disappointed by his riches. Finally, his fifths, disappointed by his life. He didn't speak to them all, but they all seemed satisfied. Suddenly, they all disappeared, one by one, generation by generation. Finally, a burning situation. Then his vision faded. And all was dark. Angel of Death are written in crude Sharpie on a helmet. It's written just above a drab green American flag. The 1st Reconnaissance Battalion of the USMC makes its start. A blitz to Baghdad. The radio played dimly as the cars drove across the land like a single tendril of a leviathan. The distance was great and the scenery monotonous. The cool dry air whipped through my hair. I was about to fall asleep, boredom being my lullaby. At once I knew something happened. I wasn't in my seat. I lay on a bed of cool dust and rocks. My vision blurry and ears still ringing. My body felt cold. Soon it was hard to distinguish where my body ended and the earth began. I let my eyes close to the soft blue sky. When I awoke, I was blinded by a warm and comforting light. As I gained my vision, I was on an old country road. A man in an old flannel shirt walked up to me. "Well darn, thought you had more left in you. Guessing I owe old Roy a you told me so." He talked in a familiar manner. "What happened? Wait, where am I?" "Well sir, you kicked the bucket." "Well, technically someone else kicked it, but you get the point." "Wait, what? But I was." "Not anymore, you aren't." He winked. "You were and now you're mulch. Ironic, not much has need for mulch out there." "So I'm dead?" "Yep, and lucky not in downstairs neither." "I guess that's better," I said, attempting to look on the bright side. "So who are you?" "Well, I'm—" he counted on his fingers— "your great-great-great-uncle Joe." "Are you?" "Yep," he added before I could finish. "I was at the Battle of Verdun helping the Frenchies when fighting fist broke. You think Iraq was long, let me tell you." I had clambering as other people walked up the path to the dirt road where Joe and I stood. A man in a gray, high-collared shirt piped up. His dark hair was long and slicked back. "Now hold on, Joe, remember that I fought longer. You just got pinned down." He looked over to me. "Call me Roy, I'm from your mom's side. And if you want to see a tough campaign, then you should hear about the Barbary States. I bet you can't even use a sword." A woman in a blue dress hurried up the path. "Hush now, don't harass him none. Don't listen to them, sweetie." Her attention now to me. "You fought very bravely when you had to and you did a lot of good. Come on now and meet the rest of the family. I never thought I would die that way, the same way as most of my family." Since cars had been around, at least, my grandma had always claimed it was a curse on our family, that every young death would be car-related thanks to some crazy lady. She called the lady a gypsy, but I never felt like that was okay. For a while, I kept away from others in the afterlife. I watched my boyfriend and our twins, mourning my death, pressing a lawsuit against the company of the semi that killed me. Apparently they had been skimping on keeping up their trucks, so they were awarded a large sum in compensation for what happened. It was used to provide for my family, trusts set up for the twins, my boyfriend bought a decent house, a safe car, and got therapy for all three of them. I was watching over them when my grandmother forcefully dragged me away, demanding a word. I knew what this meant from memories of her. It meant she wanted to verbally beat the shit out of me. Joyous, as I cut out most of her words, one bit cut through into me like a cold knife. "Honestly, Lindsay, what good are those bastards but to sully the family name?" she demanded. I yanked my arm out of her grip, and it took everything I had to not slap her. "Don't you ever say a fucking word against my children, you bitter old bitch," I snarled. Grandma held a hand over her heart, shocked by what I said. "My word, what in tarnation happened to you? You were such a sweet girl before." "It's your mother, isn't it?" I reacted before I could think, and slapped her flat across the face. Onlookers stopped and stared as her cheek went red from the impact. "Sweet girl? Do you mean quiet girl while you went on your rants about how my mother was a whore, despite having been 1,000 times the woman you ever were? She was a French whore, a dime a fuck." "Oh please, like you were so much better," I rolled my eyes. "Did you think we didn't find those letters from your lovers? About all those scandalous things you did when you were younger than I was?" As Grandma flubbered, mouth opening and closing like a fish, I heard laughter. We both looked over to an older woman, similar looking to my grandma, who was grinning at me. She walked up and linked her arm in mine. My, now this darlin' has a spine." She spoke with a heavy country accent. Might have slept around herself, and we all know we all have. There was a shout from someone in the background who mentioned being a good monk. "Thank you. And at least she took on her babies. Children out of wedlock." I recognized that face, some great something grandparent on Dad's side. There was a portrait that was donated to a museum. "That makes her nothing more than a prostitute and a whore." "Like your wife's much better," someone else screamed. As fights began to break out amongst the crowds, the woman guided me off to a more peaceful section. Here, I recognized my aunt and uncle, both disowned by Grandma for being in THR LGBT community. Hell, Uncle Will had died from AIDS, with Aunt Jane and Dad being the ones to hold his hand as he died. "So, they're all a bunch of judgmental assholes? I guess." Aunt Jane laughed. "Judgmental, hypocritical, some of them are okay." She smiled at me and grabbed my hand. Did you really name your babies after Will and I?" I smiled back and nodded, tears streaming down all our faces. And here, I was finally with my truest family. The family like me. What is your expectation of death? A white light at the end of a tunnel? Your entire life flashing before your eyes? A chorus of angels singing Ave Maria as you ascend majestically to the clouds of heaven? Well, it's actually quite the anticlimax. Dying is sudden. One moment you're driving along a quiet street in your beat-up Kia Pinto, singing along to some edgy indie artist you found on Spotify Discover because you don't want to be like other girls. Next thing you know, the car is rolling, you feel a brief sharp pain and suddenly you're sitting in a meadow wondering what the hell just happened. Well, that's my experience of death anyway. I sat there in the meadow, watching 2 butterflies flutter in the light breeze, zigzagging in a lazy pas de deux, with no sense of urgency, as if nothing really matters beyond enjoying each other's company. That would be a bomb-ass lyric, I said to my young, misunderstood self. As I looked around my surroundings, I suddenly realized that there was a sound of laughter on the other side of the hill to my right. As someone who has a deep hatred for people, I found it weird that my body started inching towards the laughter and joy. The usual dread felt when nearing towards a joyous crowd was oddly absent. "Strange," I whispered to myself as I approached the summit of the hill. At the foot of the hill was a large picnic with people running around, playing games, singing and playing music, all without a sign of the pressures of the world that await them outside of this perfect meadow, with its perfect sky and perfect weather. "Hey, you up there, come join us," shouted some plucky youth whose name was probably Chad or Jake or some generic happy person name. Surprisingly, my body started moving towards him as if my legs were their own entity, decoupled from the rest of my body. The harder I resisted, the faster they ran until I got to Jonathan or whatever his name was. "Welcome to the afterlife, my name is Greg and I'll be your onboarding buddy," the plucky one said as everyone else stopped what they said to smile and wave and welcome me to their unnaturally jubilant group. "Hi Janet. Welcome to the squad Janet. Looking good there Janet," they all said as I walked through the crowd. There was no look of judgment on their face, no disgust or pity, as if they all accepted me, as if they actually wanted me to be part of the fun. This feeling was new, sweet, it was amazing. They all looked friendly and happy except a small group that stood off to the side. Their scowls of disapproval were all too familiar and one of them had an unmistakable thick monobrow. "Grandma!" I shouted in surprise. The fact that I was dead had somehow not struck me yet. "Hello sweetheart, so sorry that you have to join us like this, but your time has come." Before I could even get a handle of what she had just said, a tall gentleman behind her interjected. "So you're the one who got A. Charles, that is none of your business what she does with her body," my grandmother chimed in. "Nor is it your business who she shares that body with," another woman said. "I don't care that she messes around with other women, nor where she decides to implant jewelry, it's that racket she was playing in her metal horse buggy that is an abomination," he responded. "Wait, you heard me playing Radiohead?" I asked, still trying to wrap my head around this situation. "Well, I for one, Rupert, am severely disappointed that my great-great-granddaughter is intimate with other women, and worse that she used her mouth on the genitalia of N. Grandmama, we do not that say that anymore, how many times do we have to tell you?" My grandmother said in the nick of time. "Well, it's a sin, that's why your brother Simon is in hell and we're up here. Heaven is no place for pillow biters. In fact, I don't know how you slipped through the system, you should be down below with the rest of your people," great-great-grandma responded. "Yes, that's why he's in hell, definitely not theft or attempted murder but his proclivity for fellatio that doomed his soul," a young man, roughly my age, shouted from the back. The crowd chuckled. The crowd started to complain amongst themselves and seemed to completely ignore me. "She wastes her money buying toasted bread with avocado spread on it instead of giving it to the church or investing it. She does yoga for Christ's sake. What did we tell you about blasphemy, Charles?" "Sorry, Mom." "Why are you berating Charles about that, when this charlatan frequently uses the Lord's name in vain? Who cares about blasphemy when she spends all of her time on some website reading comments made by strangers and occasionally writing her own comments and basing her value on the number of responses she receives?" The cacophony continued, getting louder and louder, but the rest of the picnic continued as if nothing happened. I started to veer off more towards the laughter and the joy, looking out for Chandler, "Poor James." "Greg," a voice behind me said. "Why?" I responded with shock as I spun around and saw the plucky youngster. "Don't worry, even in the afterlife, people forget names easily. Come through and meet the rest, you need a break from the family," he said with an innocent look in his eyes. "Sure thing," I said and grabbed his hand and walked. Pre-comment: I am pansexual and transgender. This will be important later. I hear my phone ringing. So, I pick it up and hear my grandma's voice. "Grandma, sweetie? Come over as quick as you can, your grandpa just had a stroke. We are at 4X Hospital. Please hurry." I hang up and with tears in my eyes, get dressed and get my stuff together. I get in my Chevy and start driving. As I start getting closer to the hospital, I can see my mom outside crying with my dad comforting her. I wish I could be there for her, I want her to be okay. I want to stand by her side and tell her it's going to be okay. I hear horns and see a bright flash of light. I wake up to see my grandpa standing next to me. "Grandpa? I thought you were in the hospital? What are you doing? We need to go back there." He gives me a sad smile, and with tears in his eyes he responds. "Oh sweetheart, I died this morning. I wish I could tell you that this is a joke, but I can't. I wanted to see you for just a second more, but not this way." He starts crying. Oh my God. If what he is saying is true, then. I look around me and where I was lying. I see a small hole in the ground. I walk over there and peer down the hole. I see my mom in shock, and my dad is kneeling on the ground crying. I look around and see my car. It was mutilated by the crash. I see medics carrying my body on a carrier. And then, a body bag. How? Why? I could have seen her. What have I done? I break down into tears myself. It seems like I have been crying for forever when I feel a hand on the top of my head, followed by an arm wrapping around my body. I shiver due to the arm I feel being cold as ice. I turn around, my eyes puffy and red, to see my grandpa holding me. When I finally calm down, he takes me to a house, and we go inside. I see a man sitting there. He is bald, kinda stubby and a little round at the waist, but he looks at peace. "Welcome, young one. I have been awaiting for you and your grandfather. We have a great many surprises for you. But first, would you like to see your dead relatives?" "Wha? Yes. Actually, I think I would very much enjoy that." He takes me down a flight of stairs, which I hadn't seen before, And I walk into a room filled with my long-dead family members and some recently deceased family. I am in awe, until I notice that most of them are scowling, specifically at me. I stop, probably with a dumb look on my face, when my great-great-great-grandma speaks up. "This is no child of mine. It simply cannot be. This is a disgrace to our lineage. Get them out of my sight, or let us speak to him one by one." I am utterly surprised. "Wait. What? Fine, I'll speak to you, one by one. Just explain what I did when I talked to you." I walk into a separate room. Then a second later my cousin, who had just recently died, walks in. She looks shocked, but happy. "Hey bro. I missed you. Didn't expect to see you so soon." "Yeah, I missed you too. But do you know why they are all mad? I'm so confused. I just got here too." "Ugh, before I walked in, they were all whispering, but I don't have a grudge against you. So we can chill whenever you feel." "Okay, but I gotta get through this first. I'll talk to you later." She walks out. A minute later, my grandpa walks in. He gives me the same speech as my cousin, then leaves. Good to know I have at least two people on my side. Then, the mass explosion happens. My great-grandma and grandpa walk in. "Hey. I thought this was a one-on-one." They look at each other, they respond with the unison of an army. "We all agreed that we would be walking in as couples, to make this faster. You will still get your one-on-one, but with two people in the room." "Okay, fine. Someone start speaking please. I can't take the pressure." My grandpa decides to start. "We never thought you would do this to us. We just want our lineage to be successful. For all we know you should go to hell, you queer." I am in utter confusion and shocked by this comment. "Wait. Is that why you all hate me? Because I am queer? Seriously? Get over it. You know what? You can go tell everyone out there, that if they are all just gonna yell at me for being who I am, then they can go disappear for all I care. Tell everyone that. And if they come back to yell at me, they can go burn in hell." They look shocked, but comply. I listen through the door and hear shouts of confusion and anger, but most of them leave. I come out of the room and straighten my shirt. I look around and see my cousin, my grandpa, and a few relatives I had never seen before standing in an almost empty room. My grandpa looks shocked, but satisfied. And my cousin comes over and we hug. "Dude. That was awesome. I can't believe you told them off like that. I am so proud to call you my cousin." She walks away with my grandpa and we exchange our goodbyes. I see three other people. I walk up to them, high-settled, but confident. I look them each in the eyes as I introduce myself. They start to explain that they are my first, second, and third removed cousins. They explain that they wanted to meet me, but were all killed in a car accident at the same time. It was pretty awesome meeting them. I say my goodbyes and go to find a nice home to live out for eternity. Thank you for reading. Sorry if it is long, but I love writing. Please enjoy. I will be creating my own story prompts and hopefully you guys can submit some to my pages. Thanks so much again. You have 3 missed calls and 3 voicemails. Message 1. "Hey Jay. Hey man, how's it going?" Good. Look man, what's going on? I saw you at the mixer last week and it was like, have you lost your mind? Pants sagging, loud talking, I didn't even know ya. I've been here a while now, and to get in you have to fit in, you know? Stop all that loud talking. You just got here. Act right. Love ya. It's your Uncle Boone. Click. Message 2. Jay, hey there, how are ya? It's Andy Missy. Now I'm gonna be quick. You can keep doing this stuff you doing. This little things in your hair, get you a nice haircut like you did when you were younger. It's not hard to make it up here, just have to do right. Love ya. Click. Message 3. This ain't right, young blood. You've been here 2 weeks and this isn't right. Okay, now this is Charles, your daddy cousin. You gotta stop all this excuse my language, shit you doing. Damn it, we worked hard to fit in, you can't come in here just messing it up now. Get your mind right. By the way, you coming to game night? It's next Friday. Let me know. Me and my friends were just trying to figure out what we wanted to do that night. It was June? I'm not sure. It's been forever. I'm just remembering the start of it all now, almost as if there's some reason in my subconscious to relive this moment. And #X200B. It was dark, probably 9 at night. We were driving to Jumbo's Liquors on Main Street, when a cop turned on his lights late and zoomed through a red light. I was already a little intoxicated. Let's just say, I took both of our lives. And #X200B. Including the cops. And #X200B. At first, I entered a thing called the back room, or something of an anomaly that contains millions of rooms aligned within each other. My friend wasn't there, he must have went to heaven. I don't blame Jesus and God for taking him, I deserve to be there. I walked through a bunch of rooms, but there wasn't really anything for me to notice or see. It was just, the same room. Over, and over, and over. And #X200B. It drove me insane. At first, I thought it was punishment for what I did, but I lost track of time and before I knew it, my 5 o'clock shadow turned into a little scuff. It drove me insane. And #X200B. Then, an old Sicilian man walked across one of the doors, and held his hand on the door. "Excuse me, young man. Who are you?" I froze, and immediately darted up and just stared. He looked odd, he wasn't from around my area, I could say that much. He had simple clothes on, not very detailed in their design, and fabric seeming more of a cloth like knitting. And #X200B. Who are you is the question. I reflected back as I took 2 steps back. I know who you are, you're John. He took out a pipe, and started lighting it. Yeah, I'm John, so your name is? He looked at me as he hit the pipe. I didn't kill my friend and a cop in an accident. Listen, buddy. We're going to take a walk. And #X200B. He stepped away from the door and took my hand. I jerked back, almost disgusted. Why are you touching me? You stink of tobacco, too. I'm not about that. He smirked. It doesn't matter what you want anymore. You're in the back rooms. And #X200B. That's when I first heard of the name. Back rooms, it illuminated over me. What? Where? And who is this guy? He took a step with my hand, and the world spun around us from the bottom of my feet to the top of my head, like a gyroscope, as we landed into a large field of grass. And #X200B. I want to talk to you, John. Oh please, you see, I know you all extraordinarily well. The information I have on you is damning all the same, I can tell. You all are horrible people from my present and my past. So let me go on a little rant while I kick each of you in the ass. Harry was a husband of a happy family of 3. Him, his wife, and little Tyke as happy as can be. But there was a one foul night he got dirty, nasty, drunk. Him, his wife, and little Tyke took a diving, crashing, dunk. Then there was my grotesque Aunt Gertrude. She was mean and nasty and awful and rude. She had 7 children but drowned 2 brood. They weren't perfect for mama, it's terrible, please listen. You cast judgment on me with that crown you christen. Your lives laid before you, it's hard, I get it. These are the lives you lived, I got it, don't sweat it. Don't come talking to me like you know exactly who I am. My life bared before you to compare to your lives I can. I was not a drunk and those 2 children I did not murder. My wife loves me dearly, you were there, you heard her. I have 2 children that I love both just the same. One is perfectly normal, the other was insane. I live my life in the afterlife with my conscience clean and pure. You 2 are terrible people and you know this, I'm sure. So goodbye, so long, and see you later never. I'm off with my family on our next endeavor. It was all of a sudden. A bright light approaching me on the road, preceded by void. From the nothingness, a familiar, tender voice called out, "Get up you useless slob." Mom? An immediate feeling of dread came over me. My mom is dead, I thought. Where am I? Come over here, fast. Your grand father wants to see you. We walked through a dark corridor, made up of nothing at all. After an hour of walking past doors, I heard it. Loud ape shrieks from all over. Go on then, my mom said while pointing at a white door. Cautiously, I approached. I knew that regardless of what I might encounter in this room, Nothing can hurt me now. If there had been time to reflect on it, it would have been sort of funny. An addict dying in a car accident, but while he happens to be sober. Not sober, just not high right that second. And to think, after all that worrying, all those mornings of deep breaths and double-checking before every turn and lane change. If anyone had known he was still using, maybe they'd have been able to appreciate the mild humor of it, but then they'd also need to actually know that he'd been sober at that moment, which would have required the medical examiner to bother with. Whatever. Yet after he died, he wasn't interested in any of that at all. His whole life, even the people in it, all suddenly of no more significance than a dream he'd just woken up from. Interesting to remember, a little, but of no real consequence and definitely not anything you'd bore someone else with. Death is like that for almost everyone. Remembering, somehow, it felt like remembering, that everything there was trivial, and then not much time spent even marinating on that. He wondered for a while. It felt new, to be in, truly, no hurry. It was years before he realized that it had been years since he'd been high. Not that he could have been, but the shock of realizing it had been years since he'd even thought about it was much more surprising than actually dying. Everyone dies, after all. He found them, eventually. Or they found him. They were the first people he'd seen, and that was when he felt the second real surprise. As he spotted them, far away at first and unrecognizable, he felt neither anxious nor excited. Just a warm, calm sense of fellowship, pleasure at the sight of other people, and yet no expectation or need. This wasn't surprising because they were strangers. He'd never felt quite like this even when he saw his best friends, his lovers. Words half remembered, he felt like a friend among friends, a fellow among fellows. Something like that. "James," one said. "Hello. We'd like a word." Relatives, they said, but all dead for centuries. Reflecting later, he thought it was interesting he'd never asked about his parents or his brother, or even relatives who'd died before him. But he never did, and unhappy. At first, he had a hard time paying attention. Listening to someone else's dream is boring, but hearing someone else talk about your dream is really something else. They took turns, urgent, trying to reach him. "We know how you're feeling right now," a bunch of them said. "We remember, but James, listen, listen." When his grandson was born, he started to understand. He died so young that his son hadn't known him much, but he found himself interested in watching the boy grow up. They all waited and he watched. No one in any hurry. The boy got older, and when James watched him drink and try the drugs that young men tried now, he felt a twinge. "He's not like me." He'd drink 2 or 3 beers with his friends, he'd feel tipsy, and then he'd stop. Snort enough lines to keep himself up all night, feel horrible the next day, conclude it wasn't for him. Normal. And interesting, actually, to watch, as an addict, so that's what it's like. And they waited. "Do you know what's going to happen?" he asked once. "Your great-grandmother asked that too," someone said back, and that was the end of it. The grandson. Born into wonderful circumstances, the boy had grown up into an accountant, his wife a preschool teacher. Kind, both of them. Married young enough to be a beautiful young couple, and old enough to have some rough sense of how to be kind to another person. It was her who suggested, "I've always loved the name James. I know you didn't really know him, but your mom says." "I love it," the boy had said. Jimmy, they called him, and it stuck. And watching Jimmy, he started to see. And he could tell that they could tell. They watched him see. Jimmy, a brilliant kid. And handsome. But not at ease. An enormous heart, with big feelings. Too big. He cried when he learned that meat was made from animals, just sat there at the table weeping at 4 years old while his father felt guilty and his mother tried to soothe him, sadder, though he didn't know it, than either of his parents had ever been about anything. And he felt everything like that. Jimmy felt joy like that, as happy as any child has ever been when the good days came. He felt anger like that. James recognized more than a little the terrifying rages he would slip into, frightening his mother even at just 11 or 12 years old. He laughed like that, squeals of pure glee that everyone loved. And he felt anxiety like that, what scared other people paralyzed him. The first drink was at a party, in high school. Some things don't change. And James watched, as the knot that had been forming for years in his stomach started to get worse. He watched Jimmy and saw, In his eyes, after a few minutes, suddenly, his feelings were manageable, human-sized, bearable. "Stop this," James said. "I'm sorry, what?" "I understand. Whatever point you've been trying to make. Stop this. Now. This is enough. I don't want to see this." Unease. "Stop it," he said, and he suddenly felt, for the first time in decades, the haunt of an old craving. Slipping back into the dream. Suddenly in a hurry. "We were trying," one said. A long pause, then. Long enough to watch as Jimmy ascended, now college, now law school like his grandfather, talented, doing things, achieving things, some emotional moments now and then of course, and sure he liked a fine cocktail like anyone else, but he was a good Irish Catholic now, wasn't he, and it wasn't causing any trouble. "Someone needs to stop him," he said, crying for the first time in decades, and perhaps the first time ever. His father. Or his grandmother. Someone. They have to see what this is. They don't. They have to. You know that they can't. He did know. It takes one to know one. "We hoped it would be you,"